Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 205 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, you know the drill by now. You leave your question in the comment section of this video, and as I said, hopefully you'll be featured. If you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let's get straight onto this. Swamps7630 says, hey Bossk, agree that we need the Imperial Mandalorians. Question for next week. Would you want a brand new Bespin Luke in TVC? I feel the old one is outdated and we still need the alternate Bespin Luke card back. We do indeed need that card back, very much so. That's the looking round the corner alternate image that we had back in the Kenner days. VCO4, which is the Bespin Luke that we have at the moment, has the one where he's like walking along. It's sort of quite a grainy image, that one anyway, isn't it? So it's not the best card back. The one where he's looking around the corner is definitely the better of the two. And yeah, I agree, we definitely need that in TVC. However, in terms of the figure, I mean, as much as I don't think this is a great figure and it has sort of aged quite badly, a lot of people call this the like nappy Luke Skywalker because of the legs there. I feel at the moment there are more important figures that we need in TVC, and there's more important Luke Skywalkers that we need, like for example ones that we just do not have yet. Farm Boy Luke is a great example, but of course he does need updating without a doubt. They could do a much better job. I just don't think it's as urgent as other figures and other Lukes. So but yeah, great shout, buddy. I totally agree. He is in need of an update. Chicloso 7K says, question, would you like to see an Alliance High Command Center display made where the Rebels discuss the attack on the second Death Star? There are many figures that could be displayed on it. You're absolutely right. We do have loads of figures, in fact, that can be put into that scene, into that sort of diorama, if you wanted to display them that way. In fact, we've got quite a few of the background characters as well, from like the Legacy Collection. We've got Ten Num, haven't we? We've got Major Pano. So even some of the background characters, as well as the main characters as well, for that scene, we could do that. Would Hasbro make it? I'm not so sure, but I do know some people in the community that have sort of built their own ones, or maybe 3D printed one. A buddy of mine called Dean, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning this and putting it up on screen. Hopefully I've got a photo of his little setup here. He's actually recreated that whole scene, got all the figures in there, and it looks flipping awesome. It's got to be said, it really does look good. Unfortunately in my cabinets I don't really have space for something like that, although I do have many of the figures that could populate that. So it's a good idea. I would like it made, but would Hasbro do it? Probably not. Scolio Reset says, greetings Tim, question for next week. My apologies if already asked. Is there any chance that additional retooled or resealed characters from the Old Republic era, Malgus and Bastilla, will get the matching logos on their card backs? Revan has thankfully brought a welcome change with the logo matching the BioWare front cover instead of being branded EU. For pre-Jedi Fallen Order video games like The Force Unleashed. It won't surprise you that I say that Darth Malak has instantly jumped to #1 on my March Madness list following its Black Series release and our TVC Revan late last year. This is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I remember when they were going to reissue the Republic Trooper, everyone was wondering what they were going to do with the card back, whether they were going to update it, whether they were still allowed to use Expanded Universe on that card back, and that is what they did. They straight repacked it on the same card back with the same logo. And I've got to say, that does kind of follow a theme when they reissue things. They don't tend to change anything really, unless the figure changes significantly. So for example, with the Clone Trooper, the 501st, they brought out a whole new card back, changed it to the Clone Wars, because they updated the head and things like that. That's the only time that I can really think that they've done that. They did release Shay Vizsla with a new head, and they didn't update the card, and they didn't update the logo. So my fear is that they would follow suit and, you know, end up putting a straight repack out for those figures that you mentioned there with the Expanded Universe logo on the card back. That's what they tend to do with these reissues, isn't it? But of course, us being collectors, if they're going to reissue them, we would want them on the proper card back with the proper logo. So I can understand your question, buddy. Trooper Wolfie says, hi Tim, question for next week. With the Ghost coming out and the Pipeline Ghost crew, do you think we'll get a realistic old Captain Rex, Commander Wolf and Commander Gregor? Maybe they could do them as a 3-pack. What do you think? Cheers, Wolfie. I've got to say, it's a great idea. I would love that as a 3-pack. I did like the fact that they brought those clones back and they had aged so much and things like that. Rex was cool. I've got to say, I'm not too sure if Hasbro would actually make those. I think you know, if you were going to make those, then of course, then we'd all be screaming for a customized ATTE for them to go in, wouldn't we? We'd really want that, and I definitely can't see them doing that, even though they did do that in Lego. Definitely can't see them doing that in TVC. But it's a great idea, mate. Those 3 characters would look great, wouldn't they, all together in a 3-pack? Yeah, I just can't see them doing it, particularly with all the other things that they've got to do, but for sure, it's a great idea. Pesto Pizza 2001 says, hey BB, if Hasbro were to re-release the thinner cardstock era, e.g. Boba Fett, Return of the Jedi, on present day thicker cardstock, would you re-buy all the figures that were released in that time period? Cheers. Great question, mate. I've got to say no, I probably wouldn't. And there's a couple of reasons for that, really. I mean, the thicker cardstock wouldn't really change the aesthetics for me. You know, if you've got it in a star case or an acrylic case or whatever, however you display them, the sort of aesthetic, the look of it doesn't really change for me. You only sort of realise that it's on a thinner cardstock if you actually, you know, hold it and sort of bend it around. So I've got this one. This was the first one that I had to hand. This cardstock is super bendy, and as we know, since what, maybe a year and a half now, we've had much thicker cardstock, and you know, they are so much better. However, if you were to say to me that they would re-release them all unpunched, then that possibly would change it for me slightly. I don't think I'd go back and buy them all, but definitely that Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, if you said to me you could have him thicker cardstock unpunched, then I would probably buy another one of those. But I certainly wouldn't buy every figure that they've released on the thinner cardstock on a new thicker cardstock. You know, I just wouldn't do it. Horror Fan says, question for next week, what was your first vintage Star Wars figure? Mine was the Tusken Raider Sand People. Yeah, it's quite difficult for me to remember exactly because obviously I was really young, but I do vividly remember a Christmas time where I opened up one of my presents basically, and inside was like 4 carded figures, and 100% Chewbacca and Obi-Wan Kenobi were 2 of those. I think the other 2 were Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. I kind of got like 4 of the heroes in sort of one present, if you like. So they're kind of the ones that I remember the most. Noah Thompson says, question for next week. I hope this makes sense as I'm not sure of a better way to word it. What do you think of Hasbro doing something like a mini HasLab, where Hasbro would essentially put out an extremely early pre-order and goals for a figure Hasbro is hesitant to make due to new tooling costs or fear of lack of sales? Like a 1,500 backers, we will absolutely make this figure. 3,000, the figure will be in your hands within a year. 5,000, we will make another newly tooled figure from the same media or scene. I think it would be a great way for Hasbro to get figures out like Baze Malbus, Ponkrell and many others. What do you think? Also, looks like we are at the tail end of the 96. Instead of asking which one is next, which one do you think will be last? I'll answer that part first. I think probably the last figure that we'd ever get would be probably something like a Man-a-Man, something like that, from the last 17, or maybe Anakin Skywalker, the ghost version of Anakin Skywalker. One of those 2 probably. In terms of your first question, yeah, it's a great idea because obviously we do sort of need to find a way where we're going to be able to get these figures that we want that they're never going to make. I mean, Baze Malbus, I hope he does well in March Madness because he, for me, is one that we desperately need from Rogue One. We've got his buddy, Chirrut Îmwe. We need Baze Malbus, and to get Hasbro to make him, it's almost like we're begging at this point. But in terms of like a small HasLab or, you know, some way of doing that, the numbers that you've mentioned there are very small. I'm sure you just threw some numbers down, but you know, 5,000 backers for one single figure wouldn't be enough for them to make it. They're going to need 10,000 at an absolute minimum, but really they're probably going to want to make a run of maybe 20,000 figures, you know, to make one figure. I think a better way to do it maybe is what we've talked about before, is like figure packs basically. So maybe you have, you know, 10 Cantina aliens, for example, or maybe not that many. Maybe you only need 8 or 6. You know, certain ones from Return of the Jedi or whatever it is. Theme them together and you know, get people to sort of back that. And then obviously, you know, waiting a year, you're not waiting a year for one figure, you're waiting a year for maybe 6 brand new, newly tooled figures that you really, really want. So yeah, I think there's sort of ideas that we still need to sort of push on Hasbro, because, you know, giving us say 50 figures a year and maybe only 10, 12 of them are newly tooled figures, and of those newly tooled figures, 8 of them are new media. then it's going to take a very, very long time to get the Rogue Ones, the original trilogies, and all those other figures that we want. So there's got to be a better way. Guan79YU says, hey, your Bossk, hope the new year is going well. My question is that I've started collecting the vintage collection within the last 2 years. Older figures are quite difficult to find or are very expensive. However, so many of them are getting incredible updates, and I aim to get the best version of the character. I'm a prequels original trilogy fan. What figures do you think will get modernized or reissued so I can focus on a few older figures? Many thanks. This is difficult to say. It's always difficult to say what Hasbro are going to do and what they class as something that doesn't need updating, that they can just straight reissue to get it out there, and sort of mention that, you know, newer collectors are going to want these figures. Yeah, they probably do, but ideally they'd want them updated as well, right? So what I did is I made a video a while ago now. I will leave a card up there. You can watch it after this video. And it was basically figures that I felt were safe from being reissued. And a lot of them are clone troopers, essentially, and people like Tarkin, for example. I don't think they will ever reissue the Tarkin that we got from back in 2011, 2012, whenever it was. Because it's an older sculpt now. You know, we've got the new officer sculpt. If they're going to do a new Tarkin, then they'll give us a new one based on that new mould. So that one, in my opinion, is safe from a straight reissue. They might use the same card back, don't get me wrong, I'm talking about the figures here, right? So I've got this one as an example here. You know, at the end of the day, I don't think they'll ever reissue that Clone Commander Wolf because it's an old mold. People will not accept that anymore. You've got all of the skinny clones. So if you look at all of the ones from the Revenge of the Sith, for example, even the commanders like Gree and Cody, in my opinion, I don't think they're good enough to reissue anymore because, you know, we've got this new clone body. They should be making all of the future clones based on that body with newly sculpted helmets and things like that. So take a look at that video, let me know what you think. But yeah, apart from that, it is quite difficult to know what Hasbro are going to do. RD Evans says, love the video as always. Question regarding solo figures in the vintage collection. I would love to see an Imperial Patrol Trooper. The Black Series has one. Standard, of course. Such a great design, and it seems like it would require minimal new tooling. Why do you think Hasbro hasn't made this figure yet? Is it just not on their radar, or do you think they would only want to do the figure if they could also do his speeder bike, which I would absolutely love? So I've got the figure here. Let me just take him off the stand. So I've got to sort of disagree with you there, buddy, that, you know, I actually personally feel that there's quite a lot of new tooling with this particular figure. I don't think he's like any other trooper that we have. Of course, the Black Series had him at the time because it was, you know, that new media at the time was solo, so we're bringing figures out. I honestly believe that it's a little bit too late for us with this figure now. Unless we see him in some other new media in the future, I feel that, you know, in general, solo figures are, you know, not really on the minds of Hasbro anymore. And unless they can sort of get reuse out of this figure, I can't really see them doing it. But you're right, it's a great design. I really, really like it, and I wish they had done it at the time, but it's probably a bit too late for it now, in my opinion. Anakin Crespin says, question, if you had to restart your collection from scratch, how would you go about it? Any figures you'd want to track down first, or would you just start collecting the new waves? Thanks, and may the force be with you. I've got to say, the thing that I would probably avoid is the scattergun approach. I would avoid sort of just buying whatever I saw that was out there that I thought was a good deal. I would try and focus on the figures that I, you know, really, really wanted in my collection. Focus on, you know, maybe the films that I really liked and the characters within those. That's how I would do it. In terms of all the new stuff that comes out, of course, I do have my YouTube channel, so it is a little bit different for me. I do try to make sure that I buy everything that the Vintage Collection puts out, so then I can review it and compare it against other things and, you know, see how they are progressing with the line and improving things and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, if I was, I don't want to say a normal collector, but let's just say I didn't have my YouTube channel, then I would definitely be a little bit more picky about the things that I would pick up, and maybe I wouldn't be picking up things from maybe the sequel trilogy, for example, because, you know, I'm not going to be buying everything unless I actually want it. And hopefully my reviews are good enough and informative enough to help you decide whether you should be buying something or not. Justin Vega says, greetings and salutations, Bossk Bounty. I have 2 questions for next week. Do you think Hasbro should start making resealable card backs for TVC in the near future? Also, when do you think we will get the pre-order for the pipeline newly sculpted A New Hope Princess Leia figure this year? Okay, first of all, your first part of the question there, resealable card backs. I've got to admit, that's the first time I've ever sort of heard that suggested. There's a few reasons why I can't really see something like that working. I mean, obviously there's the whole thing about people swapping figures out, and you know, I think we want to make collecting easier and not more difficult, and I just can't really see Hasbro doing that sort of thing. I think a lot of the sort of pull of the vintage collection is the fact that it's on that vintage style card and the figure's sealed on the bubble. Yeah, I just think that's a bit of a non-starter, if I'm honest there, buddy. In terms of the Princess Leia A New Hope and when we will see that one, let's keep our fingers crossed that we will see that one on this live stream this week for Hasbro on Tuesday, which means we'll be able to pre-order her on Wednesday. So let's take a look at what we have already. This is from the original, or the Vintage Original Trilogy collection. Very, very old now, 2004. And we are going to be getting a brand new, all newly tooled Princess Leia Organa from A New Hope. And of course, I'm pretty sure they'll use this same card back. I really hope they do anyway, because we are yet to have this one in the Vintage Collection. I know some people count this and the Vintage Saga Collection as part of the Vintage Collection. But for me, you know, the Vintage Collection proper started with VCO1. And we're up to over 300 now, and we still do not have this figure numbered in the line. But I completely understand that we do have her on a vintage card back. But let me know in the comment section below what you feel they're going to be doing with this figure. I mean, will we have soft goods at the bottom like we have there and the hard goods at the top? Or will they go with what they did with the Black series, where she's got like a all-in-one robe? And let me know in the comment section below, you know, what you think they'll do and what you would like them to do with this figure. One thing's for certain, I cannot wait to see the head sculpt on this one. If you think about it, the one thing that Hasbro has been doing so well in the last, I don't know, year and a half, it's, you know, the likeness and the head sculpts that they've been doing on their newer figures. And we are yet to have a really, really good Princess Leia. And, you know, for some reason, they just can't do Princess Leia, Han Solo and Luke that well, in my opinion. I don't think we've ever had one that's, you know, absolutely nailed on. Whereas with some other figures recently in TVC, they've absolutely nailed it. So hopefully they get this one right with Princess Leia. But it will be interesting to see what they do, and hopefully we'll be able to pre-order her this week. She has been pipelined. It is due. In terms of what else I think may be available this week or revealed, I think we will get some of the other pipelines. You know, we'll see them and be able to pre-order them. Most likely some of the ones from Mandalorian Season 3, like the Judge and possibly Grogu and things like that. But I really do want to see the Darth Vader that's going along with this Princess Leia. That will be pretty cool. And also I want to see what they're going to be doing with the R2-D2 as well. You know, is that a straight reissue? Is it going to be new? We've got to wait and see. Hopefully we'll find out more this week. And also on that note, I will be doing a live stream with Chris from Bossk and John Miko from the Facebook group on Saturday the 27th at 10 PM UK time, 5 PM Eastern time, where we will be going through all of the reveals, and we'll also be discussing the return of Steve Evans to the Star Wars Hasbro team and what, you know, effect that might have on the line. So that should be an interesting live stream, so make sure you catch up with that. Rob S7229 says, hey BB, great content as always. I love the channel and the content. Question for next week: do you think they'll ever finish the 96? Maybe add a figure or two per year just to get it finished. Love to see it finally done. Come on Hasbro, give the people what they want. Thanks and keep up the great work. Well, to be honest, Rob, if they did a figure or two per year, we'd still be here in 15 years time waiting for the 96 to be finished, because by my counting we're still short of about 30 odd. So they've got to up it a little bit quicker than that, in my opinion. You know, I don't think the vintage collection is going to be going along in 15 years time, so they need to sort of, you know, speed that up. Hopefully they'll be getting some more of them done in, you know, in the next couple of years. But will they ever finish it? I don't know. I've talked about this before. I think there's some figures there that I personally don't feel they'll ever do. You know, when you look at EV99, how are they going to get that figure out? I think the only way they can get that figure out maybe is in a pack-in, like they've done with the Jabba and the 8D8. Then you've got ones that I mentioned earlier, like a Manaman. You know, they're just going to be difficult figures for them to do, in my opinion. But of course, we want them to. And if you do want them to, finish the 96, then a great way to tell them that is by the upcoming March Madness. Make sure your March Madness lists have a lot of the original 96 figures on there, if that is what you want, because that is a great way for the community to say what they want. And if you get enough people voting for them, then they'll be on the bracket, And then, you know, we might have some original trilogy figures fighting out against each other to see who comes out on top. Of course, I'm not saying don't vote for like new media figures if that's what you want, but if you want OT and you want original 96 specifically, then get them on your top 25s. Alfred Pednew says, question for next week. What are the odds that we will get a HasLab by May the 4th?
It's high.
Let's get going.
It's very high.
Dave Reese says, Bossk, question for the show sometime. I loved the Rogue One 5POA version of Saw Gerrera. I was lucky enough to obtain the 2016 Jedi Revolt 4-pack. Is there any hope, in your opinion, of getting Saw in the Vintage Collection line? The 5POA figure is incredible and I would really just require an additional articulation to get it up to today's standard. You're absolutely right, it is a fantastic figure. I had to raid my son's Star Wars toy box to find this figure actually, because I don't have it in my personal collection. I would want a super articulated version. I think the thing that it's got going against it is that the Black Series one, as far as I know, absolutely flunked. You know, that was a deluxe figure and it went on clearance almost straight away, and you can still get it really, really cheap. And that's never a good sign. Would it do better in TVC? I think it would. I think it would fill a gap. And also, he's also been in Andor as well. So there's more sort of clamour for that figure, in my opinion. I would absolutely love for that figure to be in TVC, along with his buddy next to him, Two Tubes, as well. Again, another figure that's been in Andor. And he was also in Solo as well. So, yeah, I'm with you, buddy. I really do like this figure. The sculpt is fantastic. No getting away from it. But yeah, it would look great in the TVC, wouldn't it? Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. That was episode 205 of Ask Boss Bounty. If you have a question that you would like to ask me, then please leave it in the comment section below of this video, and hopefully I'll get round to answering that question next week. I want to thank everybody for submitting questions this week, as always, and thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members for supporting me the extra way that you do. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.